Viktoria Nasyrova, from Russia with Poison. You may be aware of a case involving Viktoria Nasyrova. It's reported by The Telegraph in an article by Jamie Johnson and Magnai Nanu. Leads with the headline, Russian Dominatrix poisoned look-alike with cheesecake to steal her identity. A Russian dominatrix has been convicted of attempted murder after feeding poisoned cheesecake to her look-alike in order to steal her identity. Now, just pausing there, the issue of a dominatrix immediately raises the possibility that we could be dealing with a narcissist. Let me make it very clear that just because someone is a dominant, a dominatrix, that does not mean that they are a narcissist. Far from it. Certain individuals who are normal, who are empathic, may well take on the role of being a dominant, whereby they wouldn't harm the submissive. They adhere to the use of safe words. They know the parameters within which they must function and operate. But they are able, in essence, to suspend their emotional empathy for another individual to carry out their role as dominating that individual in whatever way that might be. The administration of ensuring that they are tied captive, spanking them, beating them with a paddle, caning them, the application of other means which cause pain, engaging in the humiliation of that individual, perhaps through water sports, through language that's used. There's a variety of ways used to be dominant sexually over that person and to cause that person to enjoy their position of submission in whatever form that might take, which could include belittlement, invalidation and humiliation. They're able to suspend that. And then, when the role's end comes about, they revert to who they were. Their emotional empathy comes back. They may talk about the incidents. In some instances where it's a professional that does so, their client leaves and that's the end of the matter. And they move on to the next thing, undoubtedly thinking about what they're going to have for dinner that night. However, it is the case that within many of this field, within many who are dominant, many of the dominatrix, come many of our kind, because it is a natural environment within which that we can thrive, and also a natural environment in which we are probably the most effective at what we do, given the fact that we crave control over an individual, whether consciously or subconsciously. Dominating them comes naturally to us more than anybody else. Furthermore, the application of that role without a sense of remorse or guilt, the actual enjoyment of the humiliation, devaluation of another, caters to us very much. And in such circumstances means that you are going to find more of our kind than usual lurking, appearing within the realm of dominance. It's a role that is natural to us, a role at which we excel, a role for which we're designed. And there are many that I have dealt with, both personally and in terms of consultation, who have recognized that it was the narcissist that delivered most effectively on this front. And therefore, the fact that an individual operates as a dominatrix doesn't mean that she's a narcissist, but there's certainly a possibility that becomes a probability that she may well be one, because of one being naturally gravitating towards that, but also by virtue of the fact that it provides the narcissist with what require, the ability to control somebody to a point of it being absolute, to drink deep of the fuel by way of their reaction. And of course, there are the character traits and residual benefits that come with such a role, and therefore it's no surprise to find that our kind are overrepresented amongst the ranks of the dominants. Continuing with the article, Viktoria Nasyrova, 47, was found guilty by a jury in New York of trying to kill 35-year-old Oleg Tisvik with cheesecake, laced with a powerful sedative, and then stealing her passport and other valuables. This, of course, demonstrates an absence of emotional empathy for the victim. It shows a form of manipulation by way of triangulation with an object, the use of a sedative, lack of boundary recognition in treating the person this way and seeking to steal passport and other valuables, and also an absence of boundary recognition with regard to the issue of taking that person's identity. The two women resemble each other, with dark hair and similar skin tones. Nasyrova hoped to impersonate the beautician after killing her, the district attorney said. The remarkable case has captured public attention in the United States and Russia because of allegations that it was not her first hit. Suggests, therefore, a systemic set of behaviours. Nasyrova is wanted in Russia, where she is accused of fatally drugging a neighbour. Absence of emotional empathy, criminality, manipulation, absence of accountability, and stealing her jewellery and life savings in 2014. Criminality, theft, lack of boundary recognition, absence of emotional empathy. She is also accused of poisoning a man she met on a dating app in New York, use of a hunting ground, similar modus operandi, application of a sense of entitlement, absence of emotional empathy, and making off with cash and his credit card, absence of boundary recognition, criminality. Her crimes, both alleged and convicted, were the subject of a documentary by CBS's investigative program 48 Hours in 2017. According to prosecutors, Nasyrova brought the cheesecake to Miss Civik's home in the Forest Hills section of Queens on August the 28th, 2016. There for an eyelash appointment, she ate 2 slices and offered Miss Civik a poisoned one. Soon the Ukrainian beautician felt sick and lost consciousness. Before passing out, the woman's last memory was of seeing the defendant walking around her room, said Queen's District Attorney Melinda Katz. Ms. Civik's friend found her unconscious the next day. Her clothes had been changed to lacy lingerie, and there were pills scattered around the floor, as if she had tried to take her own life. She was taken to hospital, but when she returned home, noticed that her Ukrainian passport and US work permit were missing, along with jewellery and about $4,000 in cash. Residue from the cheesecake container was tested and found to contain phenazepam, a potent sedative, and Nasyrova was arrested. The jury saw through the deception and schemes of the defendant, Ms. Katz said. She laced a slice of cheesecake with a deadly drug so she could steal her unsuspecting victim's most valuable possession, her identity. Fortunately, her victim survived, and the poison led right back to the culprit. During the trial, the jury heard from the daughter of Alla Aleksenko, the Russian woman who Nasyrova is accused of murdering in 2014. Nadezhda Ford testified that someone had rifled through her mother's house in Krasnodar after she died and stolen everything from the toothbrush to the family gold. Asset appropriation, lack of emotional empathy, sense of entitlement, criminality. Nasyrova was quickly identified, and CCTV footage appears to show that she put Miss Aleksenko's body in the front seat of her car, drove for 3 hours, dumped it, and then burned it. The police investigation was allegedly stymied because one of the officers involved was having sexual relations with Nasyrova. Assertion of control through sexual means, use of sex as a method of mass seduction. She fled to the US and an Interpol red notice was put out. In America, it appears that she lived the high life, living in Brooklyn, wearing expensive clothes, sense of entitlement, holidaying in Mexico, and posting pictures on social media, use of social media as a method of assertion of control and drawing of fuel, relationship bulletins, lifestyle bulletins. It is alleged that she was using a fake passport. Deceit, criminality. Herman Weisberg, a former New York police officer turned private investigator, told CBS that she eventually fell into the world of being an escort, and specifically, a dominatrix. She would knock out with knockout drugs, Rufinel, whatever she was using, and take money, watches, jewellery, whatever she could get. Assertion of control, lack of emotional empathy, asset appropriation. Mr. Weisberg is convinced that Viktoria has dozens of victims who are reluctant to report her to police. Repeated mode of operation, systemic behaviours. A lot of these victims just go away because nobody wants to go into a precinct and say, my dominatrix just stole my Rolex and $4,800 from me and I think I was drugged. Because at the end of the day, every single cop listening to that story and every single wife of these guys is going to say, what was the first part again? It was a dominatrix. Also appearing at the trial was Ruben Borokhov, 54, who testified that Nasyrova drugged him during a date. Mr. Borokhov told jurors that he passed out after eating some drug-laden fish Nasyrova prepared for him, and they had to go to hospital. In effect, poisoning, lack of emotional empathy, form of manipulation, sense of entitlement. When he came round, he realised that his watch was missing, asset appropriation, along with nearly $1,000 in cash, and he had $2,400 of unfamiliar charges on his American Express credit card. Nasyrova denies the murder in Russia and the allegations of drugging other people. Denial, first line of the twin lines of the narcissistic defence. However, in the case involving Miss Sevik and the poisoned cheesecake, she was convicted of charges, including attempted murder, assault, and unlawful imprisonment. She faces up to 25 years in prison when she is sentenced March the 21st. Although this is just one article, we see that there are repeated allegations of systemic behaviour over a sustained period of time. She uses a similar modus operandi, and to behave in this way exhibits that she has a sense of entitlement to treat people in this method. She shows no emotional empathy for the fact that she is in effect poisoning individuals, that she has killed individuals or is alleged to have done so or could have killed people. She shows no accountability for her behaviour in assuming their identity, stealing their money, utilising their credit cards. She demonstrates a grandiosity with regard to believing that she can get away with such behaviour, that she sees nothing wrong in what she does, that she engages in showmanship with her portrayals on social media. She has a range of manipulations. Undoubtedly, she will utilise some charm to draw the people in the first place and flattery, and thereafter sees that she can utilise poisoning for the purposes of knocking them out, and then the asset appropriation, which is, of course, a lack of boundary recognition. Undoubtedly, this is an individual that has no sense of remorse. She keeps engaging in the behaviour. She sees there's nothing wrong with it. She sees that it's justified. And undoubtedly we show various aspects of the narcissistic dynamic in terms of her need to control people, the method that she would respond to a threat to her control, the fact that she operates with black and white thinking. We see character trait acquisition with regard to the assumption of identity. And therefore it's undoubtedly the case that Viktoria Nasyrova is a narcissist. Given the way that she likes the high life, it's highly likely that she's somatic in nature. You can see that she enjoys wearing good clothing, that she wears makeup, that she keeps herself in shape, and of course as a dominatrix there's the use of sex also, which there'll be various sexual methods of asserting control, and therefore it's highly likely that she is going to be somatic in nature. As to her school, well, there is planning involved in some of her behaviours, but ultimately we don't have sufficient information to make a determination specifically about what school she might be. There does appear to be planning involved, and there's possibly, we don't know information in this article as to her upbringing with regard to her education, what she's done in terms of other jobs. Therefore, it would be beneficial to look at additional information before making a further view with regard to what subschool she belongs to. But one's mind is probably moving along the possibility of being upper mid-range. There may even be information that would come out to support that she's a greater. But as I say, more evidence would be needed in that regard. But the evidence that's portrayed here of the way that she has repeatedly behaved and the types of behaviour undoubtedly demonstrate that this is a narcissist that is engaged in the cheesecake poisoning. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.